I held my wife Sarah in the wreckage of our car, her weak hand slipping from mine as the sirens wailed in the distance. The stranger who yanked me free from the flames just moments later had no idea he was about to change everything I thought I knew about my life and my family. My name is Adam, and for 10 long years I had given up everything to care for Sarah after her devastating accident left her paralyzed from the waist down. We lived in a quiet Ohio suburb where I quit my promising career as an architect to become her full-time caregiver, cooking, cleaning, and lifting her into the van every single day. Our marriage was built on duty and deep friendship, not passion, yet I stayed because my parents taught me that vows were sacred and family came first no matter the cost. The night of the crash, we were driving home from a routine doctor visit when a truck ran a red light, slamming into us and flipping the vehicle onto its side. Sarah died in my arms, whispering that she loved me and was sorry for holding me back all those years while I screamed for help into the pouring rain. Then strong hands pulled me out through the shattered window, and a calm voice told me to breathe as the world spun around me in chaos and pain. That voice belonged to Evan, a firefighter who happened to be off duty and driving behind us when the accident unfolded right before his eyes. He stayed with me at the hospital all night, holding my hand while doctors treated my broken ribs, and I stared blankly at the wall, unable to process the loss. In the weeks that followed, Evan kept showing up with coffee and quiet company, helping me sort through the funeral arrangements and the mountain of medical bills left behind. He listened without judgment as I poured out stories of the sacrifices I made, giving up travel dreams and close friendships to honor my commitment to Sarah. My parents arrived from their nearby farm, offering stiff condolences and reminding me that God had a plan even if it hurt, and that I should focus on moving forward alone. They had always been traditional, pushing me toward marriage and stability since I was a teenager, never suspecting the secret I buried deep inside since college. I had felt drawn to men back then, but pushed those feelings away after one awkward date, fearing it would shatter the perfect image my family expected of me. Evan never pushed for details about my past, yet his steady presence slowly cracked the walls I had built around my heart, making me feel seen for the first time in years. We began taking long walks around the neighborhood, where he shared his own life as an out and proud gay man who had faced rejection but found strength in honesty. His stories stirred something in me, a quiet longing I had suppressed for so long, and I found myself looking forward to his visits more than I cared to admit. One evening over takeout pizza, Evan gently asked if I had ever considered that my devotion to Sarah might have been a way to hide from my true self. I froze at his words because they echoed the doubts I had buried, but I changed the subject, afraid of what admitting them might mean for my already fragile world. My brother Mark stopped by unannounced one afternoon and noticed Evan leaving with a warm hug that lingered a second too long, sparking his suspicious glance. He warned me later that people in our conservative town might talk if I spent too much time with a guy like Evan, and that our parents would never understand. The tension built slowly as I started questioning everything I believed about love and duty, while Evan patiently waited without demanding answers I was not ready to give. Summer turned to fall, and the leaves changed color, mirroring the shift happening inside me as Evan's kindness chipped away at the guilt I carried from Sarah's death. I began to open up more, sharing how the accident had not only taken Sarah, but also forced me to confront the life I had put on hold for over a decade. Evan encouraged me to join him at a local support group for grieving spouses, where his presence made the painful sessions feel less lonely and more hopeful. Back at home, I sorted through old photos of Sarah and me smiling at the camera, yet feeling the emptiness of knowing I had loved her deeply without being in love. My mother called one night to check on me and casually mentioned that the family expected me to start dating women again soon because that was the right path forward. Her words stung because they reminded me of the pressure I had always felt to conform and hide the part of myself that yearned for something different. I hung up the phone with a heavy heart, wondering if I could ever reconcile my emerging feelings for Evan with the expectations my family had placed on me since childhood. The drama escalated when Mark saw Evan and me laughing together at a coffee shop downtown, and he reported back to our parents with exaggerated concern in his voice. Dad showed up at my door the next day, his face tight with disapproval, demanding to know what was going on between me and that firefighter from the accident. I tried to explain that Evan was just a friend who had saved my life, but the words felt hollow even to me as my heart raced with unspoken truth. The conversation grew heated as Dad listed all the reasons a man in my position should focus on rebuilding a traditional life instead of confusing friendships. He reminded me of the values they had instilled, how Sarah had been a blessing, and how God intended marriage to be between a man and a woman only. I felt the familiar weight of their expectations crushing down on me again, but this time a spark of defiance flickered inside, refusing to stay silent forever. Evan sensed the growing strain when I canceled our usual evening walk, citing family obligations, and he offered to give me space if that was what I needed. His understanding only made me realize how much I had come to rely on him, not just for support, but for the genuine connection I had never allowed myself to feel before. As winter approached, the leaves fell completely, leaving the trees bare like the protective layers I had maintained around my identity for so long. I knew a confrontation was coming, but I could not predict how it would shatter everything I thought I understood about my family and myself in the process. The build-up reached its peak when my mother invited the whole family for Thanksgiving dinner, insisting it was time for me to move past the grief and rejoin normal life. Thanksgiving dinner started with the usual prayers and laughter around the table, but the air felt thick with unspoken questions about my recent friendship with Evan. Mark brought it up casually over turkey, asking if the firefighter was still hanging around and whether I had considered dating any nice girls from church yet. Dad's fork clattered against his plate as he glared at me, demanding straight answers about why I was spending so much time with a man instead of rebuilding my life properly. I tried to deflect, explaining that Evan had been there during the worst moment of my life, and his support meant more than they could understand right now. The tension exploded when Dad slammed his hand on the table, declaring that no son of his would turn his back on family values by chasing after something unnatural. He accused me of betraying Sarah's memory and the sacrifices she had made while I cared for her, insisting that real men honored their vows even after death. Mom sat quietly with tears in her eyes, nodding along, as if agreeing that my closeness with Evan was a dangerous distraction from the path they had always planned for me. I felt the years of suppressed feelings rising up like a wave, threatening to crash over the carefully constructed image of the dutiful son I had maintained for decades. In that moment, I confessed quietly that I had always known I was different, but had hidden it to please them and to fulfill the role they expected of me. The room fell silent except for the ticking clock as Dad's face turned red with anger, shouting that I was confused and that the grief was making me say crazy things. He stormed out to the porch, leaving Mom to plead with me to think of the family reputation and how gossip would spread through our small community like wildfire. Mark shook his head in disappointment, muttering that I owed it to everyone to keep quiet and find a good woman to settle down with before it was too late. I left the house that night, driving aimlessly through the dark streets until I ended up at Evan's apartment, where he opened the door without questions and simply held me while I cried. We talked for hours about my childhood fears, the pressure from my parents, and the relief I felt finally voicing the truth I had buried since my first crush in high school. Evan shared his own coming-out story from years ago when his family had struggled, but eventually accepted him, teaching me that healing was possible even after painful rejection. His gentle encouragement gave me the courage to consider living openly for the first time, and I began to imagine a future where love did not require constant hiding. The next few weeks brought more family calls filled with ultimatums from Dad, who refused to accept any explanation that challenged his rigid view of what a man should be. I started seeing Evan more openly, meeting for dinners and walks that felt like dates, though we kept things respectful and focused on emotional connection rather than anything physical. One crisp afternoon in the park, Evan took my hand under the golden leaves and told me he had fallen for me from the moment he pulled me from the wreckage. His words filled me with a warmth I had never known, making the years of sacrifice for Sarah feel like a necessary chapter that had led me to this unexpected turning point. Yet the conflict deepened when my parents learned about our growing closeness through a mutual friend who spotted us together and reported back with concern and judgment. Dad called me late one evening, his voice trembling with rage, accusing me of throwing away everything he and Mom had taught me about faith and family duty. He threatened to cut me out of their lives completely if I continued down this path, insisting that associating with Evan was a betrayal of Sarah and our shared history. The argument escalated over the phone as I defended my feelings, explaining that love had found me in the form of a man who saw me completely without conditions. Mom got on the line crying and begging me to reconsider for the sake of holidays and grandchildren they still hoped I might provide someday through a proper marriage. I hung up feeling raw and exposed, knowing that the family secret I had carried alone was now threatening to tear apart the very foundation of my relationships with them. Evan listened patiently when I recounted the call, offering his shoulder and reminding me that my worth was not defined by their approval, but by the truth in my own heart. We spent the following days in quiet reflection, where I revisited old journals from college filled with confused entries about boys I liked and the fear of disappointing everyone. The climax built to a breaking point when Dad showed up at my door unannounced with Mark in tow, demanding a face-to-face meeting to settle the matter once and for all. They sat in my living room listing every Bible verse and family story they could recall to convince me that my attraction to Evan was a temporary phase caused by grief. I countered with the story of how Evan had saved my life, both literally and figuratively, pulling me from isolation and helping me rediscover joy after years of selfless duty. The room grew louder as Dad's voice boomed with accusations of selfishness and moral failure, refusing to hear any perspective that did not align with his long-held beliefs. In the heat of the confrontation, something unexpected happened when Mom finally spoke up, revealing a long-buried family truth that none of us had ever suspected. Mom's voice trembled as she admitted that Dad had once struggled with similar feelings in his youth before marrying her and choosing the traditional path expected of him. She explained how he had confided in her years ago about a close friendship with a man named Thomas during college that had crossed into something deeper and more confusing for him. Dad froze in shock, his face paling as the secret he had guarded for decades spilled out into the open, shattering the image of unwavering certainty he had always projected. He had suppressed those emotions, buried them under layers of hard work on the farm and strict parenting to ensure his children never faced the same internal battles he had endured. Mom continued softly, saying that she had supported him through it all, believing their marriage and family would heal the doubts, but she had always wondered if he regretted hiding his true self. The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap as Mark stared wide-eyed between us, realizing that the man who opposed my happiness was carrying the same hidden truth all along. Dad sank into the chair, his hands shaking as he whispered that he had sacrificed his own feelings to build the stable life he thought was right for everyone, including me. I sat there stunned, watching the father who had condemned my connection with Evan confront the mirror of his own past choices and the pain he had carried silently for years. The betrayal I expected from the family confrontation twisted into something entirely different, a moment of raw vulnerability that exposed the hypocrisy none of us had anticipated. Evan, who had arrived quietly at my invitation during the argument, stood by my side, offering silent strength as the family dynamic shifted in ways no one could have predicted. Dad looked at me with tears in his eyes for the first time in my adult life, admitting that his anger stemmed from fear that I would face the same loneliness he had known. He confessed that watching me find courage with Evan reminded him of the path he had abandoned and the man named Thomas he had never fully forgotten, even after decades. The room filled with a heavy silence, broken only by Mom's gentle sobs as she reached for Dad's hand, affirming that their love had been real despite the secrets they both held. Mark remained quiet, processing the information before finally speaking up to say that perhaps it was time for all of us to stop pretending and start understanding one another better. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow, realizing that the opposition I faced had roots in my father's own unresolved struggles rather than outright rejection of who I was. The twist unraveled further when Dad asked Evan directly about his life and listened intently for the first time without interrupting or dismissing the answers he received. Their conversation stretched late into the evening, touching on faith, family expectations, and the courage it took to live authentically in a world that often demanded conformity. By the end, Dad did not fully embrace the idea of my relationship, but he stopped issuing ultimatums and instead requested time to reflect on his own buried past with Thomas. I walked Evan to his car that night under a clear, starry sky, feeling lighter than I had in years, as if the weight of hidden truths had finally begun to lift for everyone involved. The following months brought tentative steps toward healing with family dinners that included careful questions about Evan and gradual acceptance from Mom, who saw the positive change in me. Dad visited occasionally, sharing stories from his youth that he had never told before, including the summer he spent with Thomas before choosing the safer conventional route. Those talks revealed the depth of his internal conflict and how he had channeled it into raising us with ironclad rules to protect us from similar heartaches he had known. Evan and I grew closer through it, all sharing quiet evenings where we discussed the future without pressure, focusing on the emotional bond that had saved me from despair. I started volunteering at the local LGBTQ support center, inspired by Evan's example and my father's reluctant openness, using my story to help others facing family secrets of their own. The pain of Sarah's loss remained a tender part of me, but it no longer defined my entire identity as I learned to honor her memory while embracing the love I had found with Evan. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came blooming flowers in the park where Evan and I first held hands, openly symbolizing the new chapter unfolding in my life. My family attended a small gathering at my house one sunny afternoon, where Dad shook Evan's hand with genuine respect, though the words of full approval still felt distant. The healing process was slow and imperfect, marked by occasional awkward silences and old habits resurfacing, but progress felt real and worth every difficult conversation along the way. I reflected often on the sacrifices I had made for Sarah and how they had unknowingly prepared me to recognize true connection when it arrived in the form of Evan's steady presence. The man who pulled me from the wreckage had become far more than a rescuer. He was the catalyst for uncovering truths that bound my family together in unexpected ways. As summer approached again, I stood on my porch watching Evan tend to the small garden we had planted together, feeling grateful for the journey that had led us here. Dad called one evening to invite us both to the farm for a barbecue, a small but significant gesture that hinted at his ongoing effort to bridge the gap between his past and my present. Mom baked her famous apple pie, and we shared stories around the table where laughter replaced some of the earlier tension, even if complete understanding remained a work in progress. The experience taught me that family secrets could both wound and ultimately strengthen us when brought into the light with honesty and compassion from all sides. Evan squeezed my hand under the table during that meal, his eyes conveying the quiet joy of knowing we had navigated the storm together and emerged stronger for it. I no longer felt trapped by the expectations that once defined me. Instead, I embraced the freedom to love openly while honoring the lessons from my marriage to Sarah. The road ahead held uncertainties, but the foundation we were building felt solid, rooted in mutual respect and the courage to face truths that had been hidden for too long. Through it all, I learned that destiny sometimes arrived in the aftermath of profound loss, wrapped in the arms of a stranger who turned out to be exactly what my heart needed. The days blended into a peaceful rhythm as Evan and I settled into a relationship built on trust, shared laughter, and the deep emotional connection that had grown steadily since the accident. We traveled to nearby lakes on weekends where we talked for hours about dreams I had set aside during my years of caregiving and the adventures Evan had pursued after coming out. My parents watched from a distance with cautious support, Dad occasionally sending messages asking how things were going without pressing for details that might reopen old wounds. Mark even joined us for a casual hike one weekend where he admitted that seeing me happy had forced him to question some of the rigid beliefs he had inherited from our upbringing. The family dynamic continued to evolve slowly, with Mom organizing a small reunion that included Evan as a guest rather than an outsider, a milestone that brought tears to my eyes. Dad pulled me aside during that gathering, confessing that confronting his own secret had helped him understand why he had fought so hard against my choices initially. He spoke of Thomas with a mix of nostalgia and regret, explaining how that friendship had shaped him in ways he never fully acknowledged until now. The conversation healed parts of our relationship I thought were permanently broken, allowing us to move forward without the burden of unspoken judgments hanging between us. I visited Sarah's grave more often, now bringing flowers and updating her on the life I was building, feeling her spirit would approve of the happiness I had finally found. Evan joined me on one such visit, standing respectfully by my side as I whispered thanks to her for the years we shared and the lessons her strength had taught me. Back home, we cooked meals together, laughing over burnt attempts and planning simple future goals like adopting a dog or renovating the house to make it truly ours. The community around us began to accept the change gradually, with neighbors offering kind words instead of whispers as they witnessed the positive transformation in my demeanor. Support group friends celebrated our relationship milestones with potluck dinners, where stories of similar family journeys provided comfort and validation for the path we had chosen. Through these experiences, I realized that love in its truest form transcended the labels and expectations society often imposed, allowing space for both grief and new beginnings. Evan's patience never wavered, even on days when old doubts resurfaced, reminding me gently that healing was not linear, but a continuous journey worth every step. One evening under the stars on our backyard deck, he told me that saving me that fateful night had saved him too, by leading him to a partner who understood sacrifice and resilience. His words wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket, erasing the last remnants of loneliness I had carried since Sarah's passing and the years of hidden identity before that. We danced slowly to an old song playing from the radio, sharing a quiet kiss that symbolized the romantic bond we had nurtured with care and respect throughout our time together. The family secret that once threatened to destroy us had instead become a bridge, fostering deeper conversations and a more authentic connection among all of us. Dad invited Evan to help with farm chores one weekend, an act that spoke volumes about his evolving acceptance and willingness to integrate my partner into our family traditions. Mom baked cookies for us both and shared recipes from her own mother, passing down a sense of belonging that I had feared was lost forever in the wake of my confession. As autumn returned with its vibrant colors, I reflected on the full circle from the crash that took Sarah to the rescue that introduced Evan, and the revelations that healed old family rifts. The pain of loss would always linger as a part of my story, but it no longer overshadowed the joy I found in embracing who I truly was with the man I loved. Our life together felt balanced, filled with ordinary moments that carried extraordinary meaning, from morning coffee conversations to evening walks that strengthened our emotional tie. I volunteered more actively, now mentoring young people struggling with similar family pressures, drawing from both my experiences and the wisdom Evan and my father had shared. The healing extended beyond our immediate circle, touching friends and extended relatives who reached out with messages of support after hearing bits of our story through the grapevine. One crisp morning, Dad called to say he had located an old letter from Thomas and wanted to share it with me as a way of closing that chapter of his life openly. We met at the farm, where he read excerpts aloud, his voice steady yet emotional, revealing the depth of feelings he had once denied and the peace he was finally making with them. The moment solidified the twist that had changed everything, proving that the person who opposed me most fiercely had walked a parallel path all along. Evan listened with empathy when I recounted the visit, affirming that such honesty strengthened families rather than breaking them apart as we had once feared. Together we planted a tree in the backyard to symbolize growth and renewal, honoring both Sarah's memory and the new roots we were establishing as a couple. Life moved forward with its natural ebb and flow, bringing challenges like work stress and family visits, but always returning to the core of mutual love and understanding. I no longer questioned my choices, knowing that following my heart after years of sacrifice had led to a destiny richer than anything I could have planned. The man who saved me from the wreckage had become the partner who saved me from a life half-lived, teaching me that true destiny often arrived disguised as unexpected rescue. As we celebrated our first anniversary with a quiet dinner, Evan raised a glass to the journey that began in tragedy and blossomed into something beautifully real and lasting. Looking back, I saw how every twist, every conflict, and every revelation had woven together into a tapestry of resilience, humanity, and the power of honest love. The family that once felt divided now gathered with greater empathy, sharing meals and memories, while respecting the individual paths each of us chose to follow. In the end, the secret that defined my past became the catalyst for a more open future, where acceptance replaced judgment and healing replaced hidden pain. Is it wrong to embrace your true self even when it challenges family traditions, or right to hide your identity to preserve their approval?